On this evening, I would like for you to take note of several scriptures that we will reference. But I'd like to begin by bringing our attention back to this past Monday's call, where we looked at Matthew chapter 14, verses 22 and 23. There we emphasize the importance of alone time with God. Jesus, as you remember, had a hectic schedule and spent some time dealing with people, their cares, and their concerns. And he sent the disciples away, and he went to a mountain to pray. It's good to get away and have some alone time. But what do you do in that alone time? And how are we to benefit from taking time alone with God? I'd like to offer you 5 thoughts on this evening about the value of alone time with God. Some simple but profound things that happen when we turn off technology, when we dismiss our social circle, when we divorce ourselves from all that's on our schedules, and just spend some time with God. Here's how to make that a meaningful part of your life. Here's how to make that a meaningful part of your growth and development. The first thing that you want to do in taking time alone with God is to focus on the person of God. That is, focus on just his being. Focus on his character, his power. Focus on his faithfulness. You know, the Bible teaches us that God is faithful. That means that God is to be depended on. He's trustworthy. You can count on him. God is faithful as found in 1 Corinthians 1, verse number 9. When you spend time focusing on the person of God, the benefit is that it helps us to be in awe of him, and it helps us to appreciate him. Think about for a moment how much we focus on. We focus on people, we focus on our jobs, we are focusing on television, radio, problems. So many different things capture our attention, good, bad, or indifferent. But the less we focus on God, the more we become focused on the things of this world, and we lose our sense of awe and appreciation of the God that we serve. We need to spend time just thinking about the fact that God is love and God is merciful, God is forgiving, God is powerful. Not only does that help us to gain a better awe and appreciation of him, it helps us to be more humble, and it helps us to be encouraged. Think about, for example, if you were to focus just on the power of God. You just say, every day I'm going to spend 5 minutes, 10 minutes thinking about the power of God. Looking at creation, looking at the seasons, looking at the effects of gravity, and looking at the moon, the stars, the sun, just thinking about the power of God. What would that do for you in those moments when you feel powerless? So, in your alone time with God, focus on the person of God, his being, his character, his power, his faithfulness. Number 2, focus on your purpose from God. Here are 2 questions that we might want to consider. And Psalms 90, verse 12, teaches us to ask God to help us to number our days. It has often been said that Psalms 90 and 12 is not teaching us to count our days, but make our days count. So those two questions that all of us need to consider. Number one, why am I here? Every person needs to think about, why do you exist? Why am I here? Because why you are here will be the determining factor in when you stand before God, how he's going to see your life. Think, for example, if you were to send your children or grandchildren on a mission, and they go and they do everything that they do but come back and not done half of what you asked them to do. How would you see them? How would you look at them? How would you evaluate them? They can come back and say, oh, I had fun, oh, I did this, oh, I did that, but did you do what I sent you to do? So the question that we need to ask is, why am I here? Why did God send me here? Because when I go to judgment, he's going to say, did you do what I sent you to do? The second question is, how long am I here? Tomorrow is not promised any of us. But when we think about why we're here and how long we're here, it benefits us because it helps us to stay on track. It helps us to focus on why we're here, the brevity of life. And as we stay on track, it'll certainly keep us out of a lot of trouble. There are a lot of things that happen that we say, well, it must have been God's will. Well, every problem, every pain, every difficulty is not the will of God, because God has given us choice. And so many things happen not as a result of what God willed, but it's what we chose. So when we are alone with God, we need to focus on the person of God, and we need to focus on our purpose from God. And remember, that purpose entails, why am I here? And how long am I going to be here? The third thing to do in taking time with God is to focus on presenting your problems and pain to God. Yes, present your problems and pain to God. 1 Peter 5, verse 7 teaches us about casting our cares, giving over to God our pains, our problems, our difficulties, our disappointments. There's a song that is sang in many churches called Leave It There. And in that song, it says, take your burdens to the Lord, leave them there. How often do we take our burdens to the Lord and then we bring them back home with us? I've even heard preachers, and I'm sure they didn't mean it in this sense, but when you come to church, drop your problems off at the door and pick them up on your way out. Well, if you're going to give your problems to the Lord, why are you taking them back with you? See, the benefit of presenting your problems and your pain to God is that it'll help you to manage stress, and it'll help you to maintain your joy. Because nothing takes our joy like feeling overwhelmed. Nothing takes our joy like feeling frustrated. Nothing takes our joy like we're not achieving, accomplishing, and acquiring. But when we give those things over to the Lord, our disappointments, our discouragement, our down times, our depression, it'll help us to manage that and work through that and to experience God's joy. Number 4, in your alone time with God, focus on the past providence of God. You have heard me say that people have selective spiritual amnesia. They forget, they forget what they should not forget, or what they should forget, they recall, and what they should recall, they forget. We selectively remember things, and the stuff we need to remember is the stuff we just can't remember. How about thinking about Psalm 77, verses 11 through 12, which teaches us to recall the goodness of God and just to reflect on how good God has been. Thinking about his grace and where he's brought you from and how he's brought us through. That helps us with our faith because we get times of difficulty and we get overwhelmed and we get discouraged. We feel like no one understands but me. I'm not going to make it through this. I'm not going to get beyond this. The weight of the world is on me. There are no answers, no solutions, no breakthroughs. But when you focus on the past providence of God and you remember how you felt those same things in the past and God made a way, he said yes when someone said no. He lifted you up when you've been knocked down. When you think about where God has brought you from to where God has brought you to, oh, how encouraging that can be. And then last, focus on your personal relationship and fellowship with God. You know, people are consumed with other people, what they're doing, how they carry themselves, what they're wearing, where they go, how they spend their time, how they spend their money. But we need to just look at ourselves. Because one person we cannot change is somebody else. One person we cannot control is another person. And when we stand before God, he won't ask us did we get all the goods on that brother or that sister. So it is good for us to take a note from Paul, like in 1 Corinthians chapter 9 and verse number 27, where he gave a caution to himself. Have you ever cautioned yourself? He says, but I discipline my body and bring it into subjection, lest when I have preached to others, I myself should become disqualified. We need to practice more self-control and humbleness. And that happens when we say, I'm going to stay out of everybody else's business. And I am going to spend time focusing on my relationship with God and my fellowship with him. So what do we do when we're alone with God? Focus on the person of God. Focus on your purpose from God. Focus on presenting your problems and pains to God. Focus on the past providence of God. And focus on your personal relationship and fellowship with him. And in that alone time, you'll discover something, and that is you're not alone because God is with you. This has been another installment of A Few Minutes with the Minister.